What's up, everybody? I'm Fernando Mastrangelo. Welcome back to Design Discord. Today, I have Dan Rubinstein. Unless you've been living under a rock, you should probably know the Grand Tourist. Dan started this after leaving Departures, and it was started off as a podcast, and now it's turned into a amazing magazine. It's this, and yes, this is a magazine. It's unbelievable, and he kind of uses the podcast to inform the magazine inform. They're doing events, he gives talks, he's doing all sorts of stuff. So today we talk about media in design, because he started at House and Garden, then went to Surface and Departures, and there's a lot going on in media. It's changing, and so we wanted to sit down with him and kind of get his view, real insider view of that part of this industry. And I think there's nobody better to kind of, explain this to us and take us through the journey. So this was a great conversation. I'm really excited. Let's jump in. The GOAT of design, art, fashion, podcasting at the moment.
No one's ever called me a GOAT before. So I'm going to very humbly, accept this unbelievable compliment.
No, it's, there's not a lot of it in the industry. So I feel like you're doing it right. I feel like you're kind of like the New Yorker version of podcasting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No, because of the way that you do the graphics, the illustrations, it just has a beautiful elegance to it that I think the New Yorker. So I kind of think of you as like the New Yorker version of podcasting for our industry and beyond.
All right. Thank
you.
All right.
So it was good to start with a compliment.
It's all downhill from here.
No, not at all. I kind of want to start with what the old style magazines actually did right for design culture, and maybe something that we don't like fully appreciate now about those times, to kind of start there. Because you have, you were part of that in a big way.
Thanks. Thank you for having me, by the way. I would say, it's funny. I'm 48 now. I'm kind of staring down 50. And I think everyone in their career has a point, and I'm sure you've had it too with people in your studio, where you're younger than me, but
I'm 48. I'm going to be 48 in October, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
No, all so right. We're the same age.
So you're a young man.
I'm a young man. Yeah.
But there is a point where you kind of realize, oh, I'm the old one in the room now. Like I'm the senior statesman of wherever I am, right? And I now realize that people today who maybe are like just joining an office, or they're only in the business for like 5 years, like they don't know a world before. They don't even know a world before Instagram, much less a world before, Google, right? Like my first job, like we didn't have Google, there was no YouTube. Like we were editing. I was editing, interviews on like an old Sony Vaio desktop for QuickTime, like very like pre everything. So like there was no YouTube. It was all very, very early. So magazines have changed a lot, and people don't know the care and expertise and craftsmanship that went into every issue of some of the magazines that we love and we still look up to today. And you can really tell, because some of those really old magazines, I have a lot of magazines that I worked on, at the very beginning of my career. I have like a set, 3 years of Condé Nast's House and Garden, where I was an assistant. And even though I was an assistant, even though I can barely claim anything in that magazine other than maybe like a little sidebar somewhere every once in a while. It's like a trip down memory lane. I just remember all of the amazing people that worked there and the incredible care that went into like every single page of that magazine. So, I think when you get older, you kind of have to you have this kind of vision backwards. And so what I'm trying to do with the Grand Tourist is I'm never going to reach that height, I don't believe. But if I can just bring a little bit of that high touch, I think that really resonates with people. And so far, so good.
Would you say that's for all the three places that you worked, or the main places like House and Garden, Surface, and Departures? Would you say that was what the atmosphere was like at those times? Because I feel like you were there at kind of pivotal times as those magazines were maybe almost at their peak, but kind of at the time where the ecosystem was changing in some way.
Yeah, no, completely. Well, they're all three very different places, and I worked them in very different times. So when I was at House and Garden, it was, after 9/11, but it was before the crash.
Right.
And so it was a boom time, but, it was still, things were changing. I remember there was someone on staff that was tasked with working on the web, and no one wanted to do it. And it was this like new thing, and no one was making money at it, and no one really knew what to make of it, but they knew they had to do it in a very limited way. When my time at Surface, I was there during the crash and with all of the chaos after that. I'll never forget being in an office and me going to one of our bosses at the time and was like, hey, there's this guy in the UK that left his job, and he might be bitter about it. I don't know. He started a blog, and he's taking all of our press images that we're getting and all of the press releases, and he's just putting everything online for free right away in a day or two, which takes us months because we were 6 times a year at that time, and we had a staff of 20, and it was a lot. And I'll never forget, like, my boss at the time was like, I'd rather have a dating service than a blog. And I was like, okay, no internet for us.
Famous last words.
And that site wound up becoming Dezeen.
Oh, wow. It was Dezeen that was doing it?
Yeah, and I remember like 1.0, and people, because we all knew him and the founder, and, it was it's still a small world of design journalists. So we all knew each other. We all went to the same press trips, and I remember seeing it and being like, oh, that's really clever. But kind of skipping the line. He's just taking press releases and copying and pasting them, and he's kind of disrupting this ecosystem that we had. That was the entire business model of Surface at the time. Right. So, looking back now, it's quite the time. And then Departures was my Devil Wears Prada moment of like working originally for Richard Story. Departures had been around for over 30 years. It was Time Inc. at the time. And I was just the design editor in a larger team of like, really was like 18 people from like everyone there worked at Vanity Fair or Vogue. Everyone had like real pedigree. And I was like, I'm from Surface. And like, I know how to pronounce Patrizia Urquiola. Like, I know, I knew that really well. And everybody else was just like operating at this like higher frequency. And so I learned so much there, even though I was already,
But were you
40.
seeing some, the tea leaves there? Was it things where, because it abruptly closed, essentially.
Yeah, the pandemic really was kind of like the really pushed everybody into some unknowable and unpredictable scenario that no one really could predict. Right. So, when it folded, it was a real shock, but also, I guess for me now looking back, last month was the 5th anniversary of the Grand Tourist since I started it, which is unbelievable to me that we've done over 160 episodes of the podcast.
167 right now, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for counting. I have not looked lately. I lost track a long time ago. And, issue 2 of the print magazine is out now. Issue 3 just went to the printer. It will be out in October. So, it's been kind of unbelievable, but I had already started working on the podcast while I was at Departures with my boss's permission. It was my pandemic, fun.
I know you really never expected. I know you were like, one season, let's see what happens.
It was either finger painting or a podcast. I chose a podcast, and boom. And then all of a sudden, once it folded, then I really ran ahead with it and kept producing it and found sponsors.
Was the audience automatically there?
No, the audience is never automatically there for anything. I really focused on that first season, making sure that every guest that I had was the top of their game in whatever category I wanted to slot them in. Right. So I spent a huge amount of time recruiting that first season, and I'm really glad that I did, because then in the future, everyone's like, well, if Daniel Libeskind is going to be on the podcast, I can't tell you that I'm not big, that I'm too good for that, Right. And so that's kind of how it started.
Not to move away from that, but I wanted to kind of just still focus a little bit on the old model a little bit. Do you feel like that old model is totally broken at this point? Or do you feel like when I think of the Grand Tourist and I think about, like, I see that as a very contemporary thing going on, then I see like an AD magazine, an Elle Decor magazine, older shelter magazines. Like, is that model just kind of dissolving in front of our eyes? I mean, do you think AD, Elle Decor, these kind of magazines can survive in this kind of new era that's developing? This paradigm shift that's happening?
I think because there are legacy businesses print, we still look at the magazine as this is the health of that business. But in reality, I think, AD, and I'm sure Elle Decor too, they make a large amount of their money on digital and on other products and events and things like that, and subscriptions, and AD has AD Pro, and they have lots of different things. They have TikTok and videos.
Yeah, their YouTube is
huge, and like we may not think of it because it's AD magazine, and we still look at the magazine, especially people in the design world. Yeah, we still look at that. For sure. But that basic model, yes, is basically dead. But I kind of liken it to, people ask me like, where you have a magazine now, why are you doing the podcast? The podcast is still like the font of inspiration, and it's part of who we are. All of our podcasts now we had photo shoots to them. We put them in the magazine.
They look great.
Thank you. Yeah. And so for me, it's kind of like with Vuitton, they still make their trunks. Are they
right?
Is that the money people really need? Is that really the business model today? Is steamer trunks? Like, no, but they still make them, and they're beautiful, and they keep updating them, and they do custom work for people, and so on and so on. So like that's still part of their character, and so I think AD will probably still be around in another few decades. Yeah. With some sort of print something. Exactly what form or shape that will take, I don't know. If you told me back when I was at House and Garden that we will all have supercomputers in our pockets and Donald Trump will be president twice, like I would tell you were you were insane.
I guess the reason I'm asking is because like I've been watching the ecosystem, and I see it becoming very atomized. I see Substack starting to voices there starting to, so I'm keep wondering if we're in this moment where these new mastheads, become these individuals essentially, right? And almost like a new ecosystem breaks out of that, and it's like, so the Grand Tourist becomes the new AD in the future, is because you've kind of built it around a more contemporary model, and that. I'm just curious of your thoughts about that. Like, are the individuals, because I had David Michon on, who does Forescale. He's got a great audience going on. He does something very compelling. I brought Jill Singer on. We talked about how Sight Unseen became a newsletter essentially. So I'm just like, I'm seeing the shift, and I'm like wondering, and I think of you in that shift.
I would say thank you, by the way, but I wouldn't say the Grand Tourist is a design magazine. It's just sort of like it's part of our DNA because it's part of my DNA.
Right.
And I think when you use the word atomized, that's really spot on. I think media reflects society like a mirror. It shows us who we are. And I feel like many times someone has smashed that mirror. And there are big pieces like Fox News or the New York Times. And then there are smaller pieces like AD. And then there's tiny pieces like the Grand Tourist. And then there's like dust, which might be just like someone's Substack that they do once every couple of weeks, Right. What you mentioned is that, like, if I went back in time and looked at a bunch of magazines on the newsstand, the business model of all of those magazines, AD, Elle Decor, whatever, House and Garden, they were all the same business model. Subscriptions and advertising.
Right.
That maybe some events, but very rarely. And that's it.
Right.
But what David Michon is doing, and Jill Singer is doing, and what I'm doing, and what Tiffany Zhao at On Tap Journal is doing, and what Felix Berichter has done at Pinup for decades, like we're all completely different. Like, even though, yes, I compete with some of them for certain business, no two of us are alike in terms of like our mix of business and how we make money and how we don't make money, and where our readers are and what kind of products we produce. Everybody used the same, more or less, like the same paper, the same trim size as old magazines. You had to conform to a certain size, and you had to conform to a certain type of paper, and you had to conform to this. I don't have to conform to anything, and neither does David, neither does Jill or Felix. Like, we're all completely different, and it's so it's not just atomized, but it's personalized. And
Right.
so just like your Instagram and your podcast and everything is so unique to you, like the Grand Tourist is very unique to me. So not just in content, but
That's
in
just interesting
business model.
That authority is changing from that, from the mass, from these publications that held so much power and authority over like what we saw, how we discover things, to now you might have 20 newsletters that you follow, you know, and go on a Substack and try to find a voice that you feel you connect with. You know, it's like it's just changing. So like I'm like, oh wow, what is this? Does it go from being atomized to then the leading voices then become the mastheads again? You know, like I'm wondering if that's where this all goes.
I don't
Just
know.
like, I try to look at the
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's really in some ways it sounds like there are now millions of voices and no one has the real authority like before. Right. You know, Anna Wintour is amazing, and but when she goes, like, will someone ever reach her level of power and influence again in a single person? But then again, technology seems to breed people who have outsized influence very quickly. So you know, look at the president, look at other people on social media. Like that, there is I think voices will come. It just won't be. It'll be more about personalities, not institutions. You know, like AD is an institution, Vogue is an institution. Hopefully one day the Grand Tourist will be an institution. That's why I needed the Grand Tourist with Dan Rubinstein, is that I wanted in the future the ability for it to be like the Grand Tourist with Christian Amanpour or whatever it is. Like it could be with somebody else.
That's awesome, because I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah.
Well, you know, if you're looking for work, you know.
No, I think that the Grand Tourist could eventually, like, you know, absorb other, you know, podcasts, things
I hope so.
like that focus, you know, you build the brand and then you can fill it with, you know.
'Cause
I feel like you're building a sensibility, maybe.
The ultimate goal is to really build a brand, not to build like a podcast or even a magazine necessarily. Right. So for the Grand Tourist, you know, it's someone once told me I was Departures had just folded, and I was rattling off a bunch of business ideas to a friend who was in PR, and basically was like stop. The medium is no longer the message anymore. So once you think that way, it doesn't matter that it's a podcast or a newsletter or it's a magazine or it's an event series or it's a brand of toothpaste. Like, the Grand Tourist has personality, and that is the brand. It's not about just building a business model. And of course I needed to have one. I didn't have one in the beginning. It was just a passion project. But I think it's less mediums. The medium is no longer all of the message, right? Like the only way to get House and Gardens ideas out there back in the day was to print a magazine and put it on newsstands. Right. That was it. Right. So there, you know, it was either that or you would make a book or you would be on TV, period. Like there wasn't, or a newspaper, newsprint. So you didn't have options. Now, you know, look at someone as successful as like Athena Calderon. Yes, she has an Instagram account, but she also has a website and she has products and she does all these different things. And if one of those goes away, she doesn't go away. Right. She's still there, and she still has her brand, and her brand might be her. She just may have like a specific name, like she uses iSwoon for one of her websites and things. Right. But like, it's still her, and it's not just about the podcast. But I would say to anybody is like, you know, all technology eventually dies. Like we'll one day be like, oh, Fernando, I'll be like on a walker or walking on Avenue B, and I'll run into you and be like, did you ever archive your Instagram account before they shut it down?
Oh yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh no, I never did. Oh well, it's all gone. Oh yeah, you know. Oh, I have the archive. I don't know where it is. I lost it. Who cares? You know, like, you know, we all had like Tumblr accounts. Yeah, but we'll all
still gravitate towards. Look, you know, podcasting is radio essentially. You know, it's just a new evolution of radio in a way. You know, I feel like at some point, we're never going to get away from wanting to see images or videos or whatever. You know, they'll just evolve into a different thing, you know.
Yeah, what was radio is now like they're calling it the era of cheap TV.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly. That's
like
true.
that's what this is. You know.
Come on, no, this goes back to like Donahue and like Sally Jessy, like those types of things.
I was an intern at Sally Jessy Raphael.
That's hilarious. I heard that story. That's so funny, where you would just listen to crazy stories that you had to take back to the producer.
That was like my most formative experience. I mean, I didn't study journalism in school, as anyone reading the
you got a BA,
probably would realize right away. But there was something called the cart, and all of the interns at Sally, one day a week, would have to go into a windowless closet with 2 phones and like a shelf for a desk. And there was nothing in the room. I remember there were no phones back then. There's nothing in the room except for like a beat up like, copy of Cosmo from like 5 years ago. And it was usually like me and a girl, because 80% of the interns were girls, and we would just sit in this windowless closet with 2 giant old-fashioned phones that had like 5,000 landlines on them. And because it was syndicated at random times of day, whenever it was playing, let's say at 2:00 in Houston, like
phones would
in between the commercial breaks,
yeah.
they would put up a chyron that would say like, "Is your teenage daughter out of control? Call this number." Or it would be a different question all the time, but "Is your teenage daughter out of control?" was like a standby. And that number went to those 2 phones. And so basically it was like a clarion call for like every, as you can imagine, like every crazy person watching daytime talk show TV in a very basic syndication that everyone had, one of those channels. And you would pick up the phone and you'd be like, "Sally Jessy Raphael, tell me your story." And you would have a piece of paper, a photocopied form, and a pen, like a big pen. And you would sit there and you would write, you would get their information and their phone number. You would ask them for another phone number from maybe their grandma or their neighbor, because there was no cell phone, like no one had cell phones. This is in the 90s. And you would write this down and you'd be like, "What? Tell me your story." And someone would just be like, just tell you the craziest stuff ever. And you would write it down, and then at the end of a long day, when you had giant circles under your eyes, you would take this like pile of papers, and it was like a Dickensian novel. Like I would walk into the producer's office with a pile of papers, and like everyone had left for the day, and I'd be like, "Hello, ma'am," like a hat, like I have like I'm a beggar, like like Oliver Twist, and go in, and I'd be like, "Here's my catch of the day," and she would take the paper and she would look at this and be like, "No." No. Oh.
That's a good one.
Her daughter joined the Ku Klux Klan, is about to marry a Grand Dragon, and but wound up marrying her brother. I like this one. And would like put into a drawer and like shove it closed. Like, "You did good, kid." And I'd be like, "Thanks, ma'am." And then I would like run off.
God.
And like that was how you learn just to talk to anybody on the phone and like ask questions, which I had no idea how to do. It took longer for me to learn actually how to like write, but like just to do interviews and to speak to people was like a really big formative experience. I was a freshman at the time.
Wow.
My summer freshman year.
Well, now, I mean, your BA has come into play now a little bit after, even though you didn't study journalism or anything, but you're now.
Oh, Bachelor of Science, I'll have you know.
Oh, it's a BS?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's definitely a BS.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, I study business, and every once in a while I'm like, thank God I did, because it helps.
Has it helped? I mean,
yeah, for sure.
So how would you define, like, the way the Grand Tour started, but how would you define it today as you see it in terms of a business and all that? How do you think of it?
It was very remarkable to me when we first, launched the first print issue of the Grand Tourist last year. How immediately everyone was like, "Oh, okay, great. It's a magazine now." And like they just kind of.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And how design is, because if you know everybody from so long ago, some people will still, it's funny now when if someone introduces you at a party, they'll be like, "Oh, this is Dan." And someone will be like, "Dan is a design journalist that I've known him for years, and he used to work at Departures." And then like no one mentions other things anymore. So Departures, and they go, "This is Dan. He has the most amazing podcast. You must listen to it." And now they go, "This is Dan." And then someone else will be like, "This is Dan. He has a magazine." So like it's really how people perceive the Grand Tours and me is changing every couple of years, really? And it's evolving really quickly.
I think of you as a podcaster who is now who now has. I don't want to call this a magazine. I mean, I think you want to call it a magazine.
I want to call it a magazine.
Okay.
We're not the first hardcover magazine. I did not invent that. There are lots of amazing, legendary hardcover magazines. But we are now a full biannual. We'll come out in May and October. Our first fall issue comes out in October. But I know that people are trying to give me a compliment when they say, like,
this is much smarter than a magazine.
It's not a magazine, really. It's a book. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Don't sully the name by calling it a magazine.
Right.
It's like, but it is. It has ads. You pay for it.
Right.
It comes out on a regular basis. So in that sense, yes, it's a magazine. It just happens to be with the quality level in terms of printing, and we printed in Antwerp, and we put a lot of effort and time into every single page, and we commission photo shoots for 90% of the book is shot by us, which I think is super, super important for a magazine today.
I mean, you get to really flex a muscle here, I assume, that you got from working in magazines, but now is this your vision, the whole magazine, like the way that you edit, the way the typeface is and all that? I mean,
well, I'm fortunate enough to work with people like Matthias Ernstberger, who is the creative director for The Grand Tourist. We worked together at Surface many years ago when I did the redesign there. But, at the end of the day, like, it is a collaboration between the two of us, but it's very old fashioned. It's like, I was like, Matthias, this is what it has to look like. Let's come up with some ideas. We looked at paper samples. We talked to printers, but, the editorial team is two people, plus Matthias and his team. So, every story idea is mine. All the podcasts are my voice and therefore written by me in a sense. So they're re-edited versions of the audio. So, it's really me and in every issue, 24 writers and photographers, and Matthias and his team, and my junior editor Vasilisa, and all of us working together. And our sales agents and all of our brand partners are a huge part of what it all kind of comes together at once. It's like, it's not just kind of whatever I want, but it's also dictated by how magazines work, how printing works, like how businesses work, how advertising works, like how it all comes together. It's just so
much smarter than like a glossy magazine, I think. Because you see this, and first of all, it feels like a collectible object.
Thank you.
Which is, I think, part of the point.
The highest compliment you can get for
No, I mean, because like you see this, it's like a beautiful, heavy-duty thing. And I think that's like what makes the difference with like, what I keep talking about, this like old school magazine style where people did collect those, and I have some from, like Sculpture magazine from the 90s where I was like being influenced or whatever. But this kind of creates a new vibe, where this is like something that I will have on my bookcase and want to kind of collect over time, and it also archives this time period in such a nice way that I think magazines, like, it's all you kind of focused on certain people that you want to kind of, highlight. So it kind of records this time in history in a way that I think magazines maybe don't as much, because they are forced by sponsors and things like that to do it. You're choosing everything in here, really, right?
Yeah, I mean the next issue is 418 or 19 pages.
Wow, so bigger than this.
Bigger than this one. It's yes, in a way, I'm not trying to be comprehensive. I'm just trying to be productive and what's the word I'm looking for? Like someone who produces a lot of output. I'm blanking on the word, but like if someone who just prolific. I'm trying to be prolific, not comprehensive.
Okay.
So I think that's a big part of it. Like the way that we cover stories, the way that I ask questions, who I choose. Like I'm not saying these are the most important artists, or if you read this, you know everything about art.
Right.
We're not a news magazine. Like, it takes us 6 months to put together an issue plus, it's just my little take on the world. And so I think over time, yes, like I choose people in a way that it's not always about emerging people. It's just about really people who do really special work. I think the DNA of the podcast of choosing people who are at the top of their game 90% of the time is part of the DNA.
Yeah,
and the wisdom, then the experience that they transmit also is a part of what makes the magazine the magazine.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I did want to touch on that, because a lot of the people that respond to this podcast that are younger, they're young designers. They're kind of trying to figure out their careers, and that's partially why I love to do this, because I want to kind of like, show them how the industry works. Because a lot of them they're at the early stage of their career. So And you are like dealing with people that have already established themselves, that in a lot of ways have gone through the old world, you know,
Right.
of they know how the magazine world works. They know about PR. They know about how, you know, and all those structures are changing so rapidly now that I'm trying to kind of like figure out a way to.
Yeah, there's something.
Yeah.
There's something really refreshing speaking to, and you can tell when I speak to someone who is in their 70s,
Yeah.
or maybe even a little bit later, and they've worked. You know, they came up in New York in the 80s or the 70s or
Right.
whatever, and they have this kind of like experience. They've never had to start an Instagram account.
Right.
They never had to think of everything they do as like something they have to publish and get judged by.
Right.
There is something really refreshing to the way that they think, and they're really focused on the work and the happenstance of just the way that everything worked out, and it's not so planned and calculated.
Totally, you're totally right.
And you know,
like
it's
Murray Moss. I loved your interview with him.
Thank
and he's
you.
someone I'm
Thank
thinking
you.
about when you're talking right now. I'm thinking of Murray. Like, what because you called him like an influencer before the word influencer was even a thing.
for sure.
But I feel like
He was the design influencer.
I
Like,
know.
when I was at
I
House
learned
and
that
Garden,
from your episode. Really.
I worked for Mayor Russ. I was his assistant. He's now the West Coast editor at AD, and
Right.
he was the design editor at House and Garden at the time. And he would go to Moss every once in a while and just buy things,
Right.
like just because he loved them and because he was
Yeah.
collecting and he was obsessed, and everyone was obsessed. And who has something new and amazing? He was like a magazine in 3-dimensional form,
Right.
you know, I miss retail. I
Yeah.
miss like real multi-brand retail, like, you know, and I think everybody that lived in New York back then, like we remember that, like we remember Barney's and
Right.
the sense of discovery. And I think I'm trying to capture a little bit of that magic with the magazine. And I think that you still can. I want people to open the magazine and not know what they're going to see before they see it.
Mhm.
And so that's like a big part of it. If something's too expected, then there's no point. If a magazine starts to look like a printed Instagram account,
Mhm. Right.
it's
Yeah,
use
that
doing
dilutes
it because you will always be beaten out by someone saying, why buy the cow when you got the milk, you know,
Right.
when you have the milk at home? Like, why get a magazine if it's just printed versions of what I've already seen? So I want people to open the magazine and be like, wow, I had no idea I was going to run into this story.
Mhm.
And that kind of unpredictability is something that I probably learned a little bit from my time at Departures, actually, because I had 2 editors in chief there during my time there, Richard Story and then Jeffries Blackerby, and they both had that flair for like the unexpected and old-fashioned magazine journalism.
Do you feel like a Murray Moss style retailer could work today? Do you see that?
No.
Why is that? I know. Why is that model so hard to replicate today? You think like, what?
It's just the cost of everything, the cost of cities, right? You know, like
Yeah.
we all wax nostalgic about, you know, maybe New York in like the 80s or the
Yeah.
70s, but you know, we don't wax nostalgic about like how you could get killed on the ACE train, right? Like, or everyone knew somebody.
Yeah, true.
Everyone who lived in New York back then knew someone who got mugged, like frequently.
Yeah,
Right?
especially
And
if
no
you-
one does now. It's just
No,
such
I've
a
lived
different,
here 23 years. I never got mugged.
I've never been mugged.
No,
I've
right.
run to a lot of crazy people.
Sure, especially after COVID. But yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
never been. Thank God.
Yeah.
Never encountered that, and people close to me have not been encountered that in a long time.
Right.
So, it's a
but that
different
sucks
world,
the-
but you
Yeah.
know, the cost of running a shop is just. I've heard someone once told me like how much they calculated Murray was paying in rent when that first Soho shop closed, and my jaw hit the floor. And I was like, of course.
So not a
like,
lot.
doesn't matter how
Not a
successful
lot.
you are. Like,
can
it's
afford
just
it.
so insanely expensive.
I know.
It would rock people's mind. No one would do it anymore. It's just not really feasible.
Yeah, I was wondering because you talk to so many people around the globe, and I wonder if you sense the center of gravity kind of changing a little bit to other regions, other areas where, you know, where maybe it's moving away from New York, and maybe you see, you know, like
It's funny, like there are all these like little markets that have always popped up for creativity over the past maybe like 25 years, that since I've been in the business really. And they've all they were really changing for a long time there, and now it's all snapped back. Like, I remember when everyone was like, oh, Miami is going to become the new New York. Everyone creative is going to move to Miami. Why wouldn't you? I don't know anyone that's moved to Miami permanently unless they were already from there.
Right.
London was the center of the universe in design for so long, and now that shift has moved away. Where's everyone going? Milan for a long time, and now there's huge amounts of wealth moving into Milan. And once again, there we are back at the Salone del Mobile. It's still there, still kicking, still bringing in hundreds of thousands of people to the fair. You know, it's still the 800-pound gorilla of design. Speaking of New York,
Yeah, you know, I know.
Speaking of New York, you can't hear the siren. You know, you hear about all of these different places shifting, and LA's the hot new thing. And remember, everyone in the pandemic, everyone was moving to LA. Now people are leaving LA because, you know.
So you think it all snaps back to New York?
I think it's snapping back to like New York and Paris and Milan.
Right.
And still, LA is much more on the map than it used to be, for sure, 10 times.
See, I see some pull towards Mexico. A lot of people are moving.
And then there was that thing, and then there was the Mexico thing. And then all of a sudden, I knew people that were about to get up and move to Mexico. And then they were like, oh, now there's a backlash against.
Oh, all the gringos get out.
About everybody moving to Mexico City. And it's not as cheap anymore. And now we're not moving to Mexico anymore.
I mean, is that kind of the requirement to really have like avant-garde, is like it needs to be cheap enough for creatives and dealers to open up outfits in those?
But it's like, but those things are always short-lived because once they grow, they're no longer cheap.
Yeah, instant. I know.
So no one's
like
moving
Lisbon, like everyone.
No one's. Yeah, Lisbon, Berlin, like whatever it is, they move there. It's too expensive. They've snapped back. Right. But for media, especially, you need to be wherever those headquarters are to meet people. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't do it remotely. So you have to be in New York or Milan or Paris or London. But for the US, you have to be in New York. If you're in LA, it's got to be something about technology. You're an outpost of something else, or entertainment, of course. But if you're in design, let's face it, like what percentage of the people on the AD 100 and the Elder Gray list put together, how many of them have an office in New York? Where does the CEO of any luxury brand with an American office, not just for the US, but for all of the Americas, where are they based? They're based in New York.
Right.
So, I don't see it really. I don't see that center of gravity changing. It was for a while, and there was a lot of movement, but I think now everything's kind of snapped back to, Brooklyn.
To Brooklyn. Yeah.
Well, I mean, New York and Brooklyn to me are one and the same. It's just, I don't think people are going to be moving out anytime soon.
Yeah, I always wonder about it because I'm also thinking in this conversation really specifically about how media and press work at this point, how these young creatives essentially get press at this point, right? Because it comes down to very few magazines are left. Mm-hmm. It's very expensive to work here. All the stuff that we're talking about, you'd have to pay for PR, all these things, right, that you have to do. So how does one navigate that part of their career, in a place like New York at this stage? I mean, I feel like I snuck in right at the end of where I could still have affordable rent in Brooklyn and whatnot and create a studio. Right. But that's shifted quite. And then you don't have like as much support from magazines and things like that, right? Because the space is limited. Those magazines have, very few spots. And are they going to put the kind of emerging contemporary stuff in there? No.
But I think you have to look at it differently. It's like, what really matters? Like, it's almost like if someone gives you the option, do you want to be in Vogue with a web story, or do you want to be in Vogue in print? But what if someone says, oh, you'll be in print, but there's no online version?
That wouldn't work.
Yeah.
That's
so
weird.
You have to think about these things in different ways, and I think it's like you have to think about press in a more like what helps me today, like what is actually helping.
What do you think? I mean,
I think traditional media still, they're the ones who are going to hire writers who can write a nice story and embellish and make you seem more important than you might think of yourself, or you may not be able to talk about yourself in the same way that a journalist will talk about you. And we still need those respected outlets, whether it's AD or the Grand Tourist or whatever. We still need them as sort of like badges of honor to validate you.
Right.
Right. Like at the end of the day, That's why you go to a website and says as seen in, and then you see all these logos.
All right. So how do you get to AD? How do you get to the Grand Tourist? How do you get to those places when, early career?
Well, yes. The easy way to do that is to, hire a publicist and let them do it for you and so on. But I think at the end of the day, I just tell designers, like, treat yourself like a business because you are one. And what that means is, if it's September in 2026, let's say, what is, Fernando Incorporated going to do in 2027? Like, what is his marketing budget? What is he doing in the fourth quarter? What is he doing in the first quarter?
Like, but Fernando,
what is your plan?
Have those things, but what Studio X, who just got on the scene and made their first great, few pieces. It's a little tough.
Yeah, it's tough, but you
have the Murray Mosses to take you on. You don't have the
the onus now lies with you to produce a lot of the media.
Right. Everything.
Right. Before if you had a store, someone would walk in and be like, "Hi, I'm Wendy Goodman, and I'm here from here from House and Garden or whatever, and I want to do a story on you." And they would come and they would take all the pictures, and you didn't pay for anything, and then they wrote a beautiful story that was fact checked by 15 people, and it was perfect and seen by a ton of people. And if there was if it was beautiful and you had the phone number in there, people would call and visit, and that was it. You didn't have to do anything. And now you're doing a lot of that work. And the more work you take on, while still respecting these outlets and what they do, I think that's super key and important, right? Like as we mentioned before, like one good portrait shoot can last you years and get you press only because you have some nice JPEGs. Right. I used to describe my job, back in the day when I was at other magazines as like people ask me what I do, and I'd be like, I'm a professional JPEG hunter. Like, I look for JPEGs. That's what I do. And I check JPEGs, and I find the freshest cuts of
that's
TIFFs.
Hilarious.
Like, that's what I do. Like, and because at the end of the day, we're all looking for assets that we can then repurpose. Right. And so that's really important.
I think I heard you also mention at one point in a podcast that you should almost like see what kind of photography these magazines are into, the ones that kind of fit, and then almost like hire those types of photographers to.
Yeah. Listen, if when in doubt, it's like when you're in art school, they don't say, okay, everybody come up with your own unique style. They say, okay, you study these greats and you take out a notepad and you sketch the Mona Lisa and you're copying basically, right? In a similar sense, like if you're like, I need to find the best design writers and just let them know who I am with a little cute email and just send them my PDF portfolio, right? So go out there, buy all the best magazines, go to all the best blogs that you love or websites or whatever, copy all the names you recognize, put them into a sheet, hunt them down, find their email and send it to them. You don't need to be introduced. Like, you just have to do the work. Like, you don't know. People ask me, who should shoot my thing? I'm like, you can find out who shoots. You just go
start looking.
Go to go to the places where you want to be seen in, right? And then just look at the tags on Instagram who shot it, and then find those people, and then
save up your shekels to pay
and just contact them.
Yeah.
And then be a business person and try to approach them smartly. And maybe 9 of them will say no and 1 of them will say yes. And so that's, when in doubt, just kind of like go out there and you know, you don't have to find someone that no one's ever heard of before. You can just copy, in a sense. Like, you can just go out there and because design and publishing is such a networking business. It's so much about personal relationships and experience you have with somebody. Especially in design, much more than fashion. So because we have such longevity.
And it's also such a small industry. Yeah.
And it's a small industry, even though in many ways it's enormous. It's both big and small, but we all kind of, especially in the media side of it and all that stuff. So,
I'm sure you guys all know each other.
we're all, it's all 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon, not 6, right? Like, it's still pretty small. So it's about building that Rolodex is almost more important than building, a bunch of press clips, in a sense. One will beget the other.
Yeah, I just always wonder how, they used to be like, okay, I'm going to make something, and then I'm gonna, photograph it really well, and then I'm gonna, get a showroom or gallery to show it, and then the press will write about it, and then I'll become famous. And that was kind of the path. Now I think that it's like,
the fair model is dying a really quick death.
We talk about that a lot.
The design week model is also rapidly changing and becoming just such a big scale event that small people can't really compete. Even the shows that aggregate smaller people can't compete. So
totally, no, you're right.
And so
we talked about it with Offsite. Like when Offsite went on,
that doesn't mean you shouldn't go. It just means you have to recalibrate. Why am I going, and what's the purpose there, and how much money am I spending, and what am I getting out of it, right?
Which are always hard to know, to be honest with you. You can't really do the calculus, because at the end it may take 6-7 months, a year, 2 years down the road for anything to kind of come from doing those events.
You can't put a price on networking sometimes, and so I mean, maybe you can if you have a really good, if you're just selling product and you're just trying to connect the dots, but with stuff like this you can't always connect those dots.
What do you see for the Grand Tourist in the next 5 years or 10 years, or how do you see it evolving?
Well, this is year one of us being a full biannual in terms of a print magazine. So for the foreseeable future, we'll be, doing our biannual print magazine. We're going to be, doing a lot more events in the future. I've done events since the very beginning with the Grand Tourist, and so events are a big part of.
What type? Yeah. What is?
Oh, we do I moderate panels. We've done events for season release parties and magazine release parties. We've hosted other kinds of dinners. We do a lot of dinners with designers and architects and KOLs, as we call them. Key opinion leaders, for people who don't know.
Okay.
Nicer way of saying VIP. So, events are a big part of all media now.
Right.
And so we'll be doing a lot more of that in the future. We're going to be making, more expansions into digital. We're also thinking about starting to film some of our podcasts in the future. It's very difficult for us because of the nature of our guests for us to do video, but we'll probably do some of it. But we have our hands full with 800 pages of original content. Yeah. Plus, we're continuing to do the podcast. So that's dozens of episodes a year.
It seems funny that you feel that. It's like, I feel like the podcast is the thing that creates the magazine, that creates the events.
Right.
But
it's much more. Every year it's changing, and now it's now the magazine is influencing the podcast a little bit. And so,
really? How is that?
Well, it's like the type of people we ask have to be photographed. And so that changes the calculus of how I think about episodes and things like that, but not always. But yeah, there's definitely like there's only so many hours in the day, and only so many stories out there. And so it's a constantly evolving thing. And I think that's as true for a young designer or someone who makes product or a journalist. Like, whatever it is now, you just work on making the best thing you can now. You can't predict the future, and who knows what AI-powered robotic hellscape we're living in the future, post whatever. Like, who knows what will happen? But I just know that for the future, we're here to tell really great stories. We're here to let you into a world that you may not be super familiar with, and that's like the core of the Grand Tourist, is sort of like what a Grand Tour was. It was a physical experience. It was for elite people who would go on a really long voyage to kind of sow their wild oats and to see something of the world before they had to run their family estate or what have you. And they would eat great food, experience new cultures, back in the day when people didn't travel that much, experience new cultures. They'd eventually find their way down to Rome, where they could experience the classics and beauty and painting and art and all the reasons we go to Italy today. The same reason people go to Rome today. And, tour all of the great buildings and see all the sculptures and do everything like that. And then they would come back someone a little bit more culturally aware and astute, and they knew something of the world, and they could be presented at court, and they could go and meet somebody and get married, and they weren't just like a local bore, right? Even though they may live in they may run some giant, company back home. So that's kind of what the Grand Tourist was about from the very beginning, was an audio, like, I'm going to take you on a virtual grand tour of all of these worlds so that you feel like you've learned something through these really experienced people. And so that's what we're trying to do now with the Grand Tourist and anything that we do.
Well, I was nervous to have this interview because I was like, because you're switching the thing, the interview, whatever.
Yes.
But
why are you doing this, Fernando?
It's a good question. I started in art, and I don't know a lot about design, believe it or not. And over the years, I kind of thought to myself, well, I want to learn more about design. And I've been kind of excavating what collectible design is and what this field actually is that I'm involved in, but I don't have a lot of historical. I know the history of contemporary art from matinee to today, inside out. I can't say that about design. So I'm kind of taking this as a project to learn about the history of design. And so everyone that I've interviewed and everyone that I'm talking to is kind of like filling in the gaps for me as I learn. And also I think that I can, I had a show called In Good Company for 3 years here in Brooklyn. And it was to help young designers kind of get exposed. And since I moved to Hudson, New York, I found that this was a good way to kind of continue that, this idea of like helping the community in some way while I also learn myself. So that's why I'm doing the pod.
And why? How do you define collectible design today?
That's a good question. I define collectible design right now as it has to be narrative driven, it has to be scarce, it has to be extremely well crafted extremely well crafted in the form that it needs to be. Like a Gaetano Pesce is well crafted, but in that kind of not so well crafted way, and it needs to be academic in a lot of ways, and it can't be widely produced. This is the thing. I think a lot of collectible design right now, like the term has been kind of misused over the years, and I think we need to kind of go back to understanding what collectible design is. And I've realized like Studio Craft, which was kind of the school of Wendell Castle and those guys, we're kind of in a version 2.0 of Studio Craft. And I think we've defined it as collectible, but essentially it's like individual artists working in their studios. I think a lot of collectible has to go through galleries, but I'm also realizing it can't really be like independent studios that are producing that. I think you need the institutions to kind of validate it, like we were maybe saying earlier.
Yeah.
What do you think collectible design is?
I think collectible design has become sort of like a catch-all phrase that brings us back to the early days of Design Miami, right? When it was where, Ambrometta was doing that thing and people were like, what is this? Like, what is design art? It was called design art. And then people started saying, yeah. And then people said, well, no, it's not art. It's not like some giant sofa you can't sit on that reflects my tragic past. It's really like I'm making a functional object in a really beautiful and unique way, and it's collectible, just like a Prouvé was collectible, whatever. Or in some sense, you were trying to put them in the same fair, in the same marketplace,
right?
As collectible. And now I feel like then there was this movement of like using craft as a buzz term, and now everyone loves to talk about craft. But is collectible design really collectible? I mean, you could bring in a lot of design gallerists who could say, no, none of this stuff is collectible.
I'm starting to kind of lean towards that.
Is what we're experiencing now just sort of a new era of decorative arts? The problem is no one in collectible design wants to say that.
Yeah.
But in a sense, it's probably true. It's just
I think we need a couple more categories to categorize things. I think like there's fine furniture. I think we should actually bring the term studio craft back a bit. And then there's collectible, which I think should be kind of at the level of art. It needs to be conceptually driven.
But if we have that phrase, is that world even exist anymore?
Which one?
The world of collectible contemporary design is that sort of golden era of Carpenter's Workshop Gallery and all of those.
The Friedman Benda,
like that era. Is that still applicable?
Well, I hope so. For the sake, I think it's becoming more applicable, especially as we enter this new era of AI. So the way I was looking at it, so studio craft came out of the 60s and 70s, and in that era, society was going through kind of major shifts that I think we're kind of seeing now, similar shifts. So I think that the handmade is becoming much more relevant again. It will be much more relevant, especially as AI takes over.
I mean, I kind of see now design through a slightly different lens maybe now in my years at the Grand Tourist, only because I'm viewing it, I'm talking to a designer one day, and then I'm going to talk to like someone who works in high jewelry the next, or I'm going to talk to someone who works in travel or whatever. And this sort of, to me now, everything goes back to this like K-shaped economy, and everything is in service of that. So when a lot of people say, are we in the new, a new Gilded Age or a new Belle Epoque, it's almost like sometimes, and this is just a feeling, is that we're almost more in a new kind of like court of Louis XVI now, whereas the rich got richer, but now we don't even have billionaires anymore. We have the world's first trillionaire. So we have this new market of, it's not even for the 1%. It's the 1/100th of the 1%. And so, when you go on certain websites and they're selling like I saw once a wooden stool without upholstery was 30,000 euros or something insane. Like, who is that for, right? And so if we're now in service of this micro niche of royalty, basically, what does that mean for design? And are any of these people buying the 30,000 euro stool going to treat that stool like a collectible object? I don't know. And I also think a lot of fairs now are running the risk of not really being about collectible design as you and I like to think of it. It's really just about really expensive custom furniture. We don't want to have that conversation, but we all know it's happening. And there's not really, and that's why we're not obsessed with, what is in the brain of this designer anymore.
I think that Mark Benda would disagree with you.
Well, that's and honestly, he's one of how many people in the world that can operate at that level? Like very, 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 very few.
And I would not even put him in the same field as carpenters. In fact, I think carpenters is doing something a little bit different. They're like scaling.
They've had their own journey. Yes.
Yeah, they've had their own journey, exactly. And I don't know that it's as academic or as intellectual as
at the end of the day, we talk about design, as we love it so much, and it's such our worldview. We view the entire universe I view the world through design and how it all gets made, and that's how I think about history and everything. But at the end of the day, like the people that are actually collecting are still to this day a tiny subset of the art market, and the art market. You ask anybody in the art market, it's going through sort of an apocalypse.
Yeah. They're all quietly trying to act like it's not.
Right.
But I wonder how much that actually affects the design world. I've been kind of curious. There's just no data, no way to know.
No. And I've been really surprised recently. I would say in the past year, young designers who want to be a part of that gallery world. They want to be represented by a gallery, whether it's a design gallery or an art gallery. They want that validation. They want to produce the beautiful work. They want to have that show. They want to make things that are meaningful to them in really unique ways, blah, blah, blah. They want to make studio.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah. They want to make craft, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
They want to do all of the things that you're doing and all of the things that other people are doing. They would murder their mother to be at Freeman Benda, to be at that level. And I've been shocked just to hear the my gallerist did this to me stories from these designers, from a few different people, from different galleries. It's not one gallery. And my jaw would be on the floor being like, I can't believe that these people are being treated this way. And they're all emerging and they're all young, but none of them are like brand new out of school, like nobodies. Right. They all have done some work. They've done some work. They're still young. They're
not
still
mid-career,
emerging.
But somewhere in between.
Not mid-career, but not fresh out of school either. And
interesting. What do you think that's a symptom of? What do you?
I think it's just part of our culture today of like the cost of everything. The pressures,
even the gallery has to.
The pressures are just so intense, and it's part of a little bit of a culture of crassness that I think has popped up everywhere. I think is impossible to ignore, and short-term thinking, and not understanding for every bridge you burn is, every person you don't treat right will go and tell a journalist one day. And it's funny how people just
I think I know what you're referencing.
People like, no, I'm not referencing anyone particular at all. I'm just saying like,
that has happened.
It is still some people in this industry like, don't forget, The Devil Wears Prada is a farce, like about a world that doesn't really exist anymore in fashion, especially in design. Don't do that,
right?
And really, no one should act in
exactly.
a crass way. But I've been really surprised lately that there have been these stories that seem to be just like bad advice and just bad business practice, and soul crushing to these poor designers. So,
damn, man,
I don't know. It's been rough. Thank God I'm not a designer. Thank God I chose a really stable, beautiful, profitable career in journalism.
You know what? You have found a way to like kind of escape that the life of a journalist, writer kind of thing. You know what I mean? And like kind of make a probably fairly robust business for yourself at this point. Yeah.
I feel like I'm always like when I'm in a group of like younger writer editors, I'm always like in like that movie where there's like a platoon and there's like the one guy who's done 5,000 tours, who's got an eye patch
That's you.
And a cigar, and be like, we had to muffle the screams with our bare hands. We did unspeakable things. I think surviving in journalism now is the new thriving, and so I'm still here.
I want to ask you more questions, but I think we are almost out of time. No, we got a little bit, but
all right.
One last thing. The thing that I just want to touch on this because it's sticking in my head. When you said about Carpenters and Friedman and those kind of that, are you suggesting that it's like that is dying a little bit? That world?
I would say, it's not thriving like it once was.
It's not thriving.
I think it's like anything that is transforming. There's always like that core that's still there, right? Like like there's still magazines that are really super important in print, right? Right? They're still there. Vogue's still there.
So they'll always be there in some way.
Yeah. I mean, well,
I don't know, man.
With galleries, it's usually about one person or a series of people that are running the galleries. Like galleries they're not like a brand. It shouldn't be that goes on forever, right? Ultimately people retire.
And the new galleries Castellis of the world. What's going to happen with Gagosian? Yeah, these.
Yeah, but I mean, like we don't. I think that world of collectible design in the way that you and I remember it from 10, 15 years ago, like that is on its way out, and if not already gone. It's always hard to say that things are like.
No, I know.
Nothing's died a bigger death than magazines. But at the end of the day, I've discovered that and what I believe in is that a magazine is still the only place where you can truly commission certain types of work. Mm-hmm. And a gallery is still the only place you can present work in a very curated, structured,
correct,
and well thought out way. And so galleries will always be around. The art world is going to go through all sorts of changes. And so will the design world, but we'll still have galleries 100 years from now. We're still going to have physical spaces we go to. Museums will still be there. Your great-great-great-great-grandchildren will still go to the Met. So hopefully, if the country's still standing, it'll still be there. The Louvre will still be there. And, at the end of the day, that's never going to change. But it doesn't mean that, we don't ride horses to the general store anymore. But horses still are beautiful creatures that still exist. And they are loved and very expensive to keep. And
as a maker, as an artist, I'm like, we will survive this. We will survive all of it. I mean,
we say this is it dead? But it's not that it's
not dead. It's evolving into something else. Makers will always be around.
That's much bigger than it was before, and I think that's really important to say. We dreamed when I was at Surface back in 2008. We're like, if only everyone else could go to Milan and just see what we see.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be great if fashion brands got involved? And what if everyone went?
Now
everyone goes.
Now everyone's tired
now
of that.
I'm literally like
Jill Singer was like.
Now I'm literally like, did you see the Chiquita banana exhibit at Milan? I never heard that before. And someone was like, you idiot, that's their third year presenting in Milan. It's basically it's so much bigger than before. I mean, it's transformed. But that's the good news is that might be
good and bad news.
The sky is falling, but actually more people care about design and love design, I think, than ever before. Yeah. It's just we're just dealing with the repercussions of success, basically.
Well, Dan Rubinstein, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been fun. Your wealth of knowledge. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. You know the deal. Subscribe, send it to a friend. I always appreciate that you guys listen to this. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart. I'll see you soon, and I love you. Bye.